We're good.
All right, we're live.
I'm just going to be glistening a little bit. All right.
All right, Tara Sanders, welcome on. I think we're calling it the Disability Benefits Podcast.
Thank you for having me on today.
What do you think of the name?
You know, listen, talking about disability can be boring sometimes.
Can be boring sometimes.
So, we could jazz that up a little bit. Gives us something to work on.
Yeah, I wanted it to be Disability Benefits Podcast, because if we just make it like Disability Podcast, then we get a lot of people that are not applying for disability or their VA disability. So I figured benefits would just make it really simple.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm kind of down with it. I mean, it is simple, and it's not always boring.
So I've done several of these with Carl, and it went pretty good. The first episode that I did with him was kind of just like his origin story for how he got into disability. So we can kind of just go over the same thing with you, and this will be fun because I actually have no idea because we've never really talked about this. So what is your origin story? Were you in kindergarten, did you always think that you were going to be a disability representative?
No, I never had any aspirations to grow up and do any kind of disability work or disability law or anything like that. In fact, when I went to college, I graduated with initially a communications degree.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go into broadcasting or television. Yeah. And we see that did not pan out. But no pun intended there with that panning out joke. But anyways, so yeah, I took a job with the state right out of college at the Disability Determination Office. And it wasn't long after that I met Carl.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I was up underneath him for a little while when he went into management. And so he taught me a lot. And when he went out on his own, I followed suit not soon thereafter. In fact, he counseled me and mentored me
mm-hmm.
the entire way. And when I stepped out to do disability work on my own, it was never to work with Carl, but he had just kindly and generously encouraged me, gave me tips and tricks and all the tidbits you want when you go before the judge the first time. He had done his first hearing with the same judge I did my first hearing with.
Oh, wow.
So he just gave me a lot of good love and schooling. And not long down the road, he was like, he was growing, the company.
Yeah.
And he welcomed me on board. And so that was 17 years ago. I started doing a little bit of work for him, and here we are.
So did you and Carl do the same thing at the DDS? Like, did you have the same position?
We did. We started out doing the same thing,
mm-hmm.
just as an examiner. By the time I got there and was hired on back in the 90s, he was just coming into management.
Okay.
But I eventually went into management, so all the positions that he held, I eventually held too.
Right. So I know when I've spoken to Carl about this a few times, and he worked doing that for a while, and then it got to the point where he was like, this doesn't seem right. It kind of seems like we're just denying everyone, and this isn't fair. Did you pretty much get that same kind of, did you have that same reaction?
Sure. The state of Tennessee is a more denial-prone state, right or wrong.
Yeah.
There are other states that are what we call more allowance-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's not one of those. I was just deeply passionate about the work early on, and any influence I had in the decision of a case that I had, I would use that. And I know Carl did too. You had very little power when you worked at the state level at the Tennessee DDS, but whatever kind of influence that you did have, you wanted to use it for the ones that you knew truly needed it. I realized for me personally, and I think Carl did too, I worked long hours, many 60-hour weeks, a lot of overtime. And if you're going to work that hard, I guess for the people, and that's what you feel like you're doing, do it for yourself, influence on the other side, where you can make a difference, because on the inside you feel so restricted with just the red tape and just the culture of the environment. And
Right.
you know, when you're on the outside, this side, you get to influence and help the clients so much more in just a different, rewarding way.
Well, and all the way through too, because if you're denied at initial and you're denied at recon, instead of just hoping for the best, hoping that justice is served at the hearing level. If you're a representative, you're the one that's actually appealing to the hearing level, and then you're the one that's actually presenting in front of a judge. And then even after the hearing, if it goes to the appeals council. Yeah.
That is correct.
So when you kind of jumped ship from working for Social Security, what were you doing like immediately after that? Like what was your first couple of years like when you became a representative?
That is interesting. I wasn't working for Carl at the time, but he had definitely poured into me and counseled me enough that, you're going to eat rice and beans for a little while.
Yeah.
You may have said the same thing. Because you can't work on the inside and the outside at the same time.
Right.
That's part of it. So I actually took another job with the state in another department and started building up my own clientele on my own.
Yeah.
Those were back in the days of pre-social media. There was not Facebook or TikTok or Instagram of any of that stuff. We ran ads in like newspapers and little bitty flyers or anything that we could pay to run print media.
Yeah, and planes with a banner.
Yes,
behind them, yeah.
yes, or ride around with magnets on your car or something like that. Leave your business cards in laundromats or just, some door-to-door stuff, sometimes mailing out postcards and things like that. But it's just something that, and Carl, might agree. There's always been a little flicker inside of me to do this work.
Yeah.
Just a little flame that, it propels you through the hardest parts of stepping out on your own. But I took another job within the state until I had built up enough clients to finally leave, the state. So.
And then what year was it that you actually joined with Discon?
I started in 2008 writing, doing case reviews for Carl.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He would, I think mailed out disc or mailed me out some disc, like cases on disc, literally. I would do the case reviews for him, and then I started doing some OTRs for him and some pre-hearing briefs. And then I started doing them for some of the other reps that had worked for him. And in 2011 is when I came on board. He had landed the big contract with Murray Regional Medical Center, and that was when I came on board. That was my baby.
Nice.
I got to help lead and manage that project.
Nice.
A good bit.
And now here we are. Never looked back.
Never looked back.
Nice. So let's. I want to get and this is cool because you'll answer this. When I ask these kind of questions, you'll answer it like slightly different than Carl and just add like a new perspective and new context to it. So this is the kind of stuff that I've already asked him. But what would be client facing, like for anyone that is not applied yet? What would you say are the biggest things to keep in mind? Like if you want to have the best chance of approval, and you want to get all your ducks in a row before you apply, maybe you're still working and it's getting to the point where you feel like it's coming, the next couple of months you're going to apply. What are some tips and tricks you can recommend people?
That is a really good question, and it comes up more than you think, especially in your community, whether it's family, friends, church or anything like that. There is no secret sauce. I tell my clients that all the time. There isn't a secret. There's no miss that you're going to get denied the first time or the first 3 times you apply. But if there were any secrets, if there were any tips, these are some of the things that I would advise someone. You need to be in regular, ongoing treatment with your doctor, someone that you've built a relationship with. I assume that if you are working, hopefully you have access to health insurance, which lets you see specialists. So if you are seeing your primary care physician and yet you've got diabetes or neuropathy, or you're struggling from something orthopedic, you want to see a specialist, you want to see an endocrinologist, you want to see a neurologist, you want to see perhaps an orthopedic or doctor. But those specialty doctors really begin to branch out and develop, your medical records.
Right.
The burden is on you to prove your claim for disability. It's not on Social Security to prove your claim. The burden's on you. And so you first begin that by building a relationship with your doctor. You want your doctor to support you in your pursuit for disability. You build a relationship with them, and over time they usually will. Their medical records begin to slowly document things you share with them, and I coach my clients often on doing this, but it's a great thing to do if you've not even left your job yet but are beginning to think of pursuing disability. Sharing things such as being limited in your ability to stand on your feet, things that you notice in your own job. You're leaving half days, not able to come back. You are coming in late. You're missing days. You're not able to concentrate. You can't stand on your feet anymore. Gripping things is different. You could work an 8-hour day. Now you're struggling to do 2 to 4 hours a day. As your conditions get worse, most conditions don't improve. They're chronic conditions that worsen over time. COPD, emphysema, breathing problems, a lot of heart conditions, if you have coronary artery disease or any kind of heart impairment. Even if you're diabetic, usually there's a progression in the disease. Neuropathy comes, and don't go to your doctor and show up and get your medication refills and not document your medical records. I tell my clients all the time, you're not okay. And I am just as guilty. In fact, I go to my doctor and do all the things I tell my clients do not do, but I'm also not pursuing my disability.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the difference. That's the number one tip is to build and document your medical records. That's your ammo. That's your proof. When you go before the administration, Social Security, your medical records are your ammo. That's your number one thing. Number two is get comfortable talking about your condition. Social Security will send you forms up front. It's your first time to testify in your claim. And you want to be able to talk about your condition from a disabled perspective. A lot of times, especially in our state in Tennessee, but this can be nationwide, you'll see men and or women, they're tough birds. I call them little tough birds. It's really hard for tough birds to get their disability.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it.
They don't want to talk about it. And they're used to pushing through. They're used to working through the pain. They've been taught to put on their big girl pants or keep on going. And so they're some of the hardest ones to coach or counsel in regards to opening up and being able to talk about their condition. It's like it's taboo almost to talk about disability or to be disabled. It makes, especially for men who have a lot of pride, and not just men, but it's hard to talk about, I can't stand on my feet for longer than 10 minutes. I struggle to carry in a jug of milk. I'm leaning on my wife more and more. I live with my mother, and she's retired and takes care of me. That's really hard for a grown man or woman to say. Get comfortable talking about your disability, your limitations.
Yeah.
Those are 2 top tactics I would share with anyone thinking about pursuing disability.
I would imagine one of the problems that we run into with medical records is, the idea is not just you see your doctor once and then that's enough to win your case. The idea is you see your doctor, a couple months later you see your doctor, and then you do that for 2, 3, 5 years. We have a really good understanding of your condition if you have that paper trail. One of the main things I would imagine that messes that up is if the client is thinking, well, I already told my doctor about all of those things last time I saw him. So they see their doctor and they tell him that they're having trouble with this and that and they're in pain. And then the next time they see him 3 months later, they don't tell him anything because it's like, well, they already have that. That's a huge problem, right?
Elijah, you speak as if you've done this job a little bit. It's so true what you said. Clients will go into their doctor and they will have communicated they have trouble standing, they have trouble using their hands, their feet are burning, and they've built a little relationship with this doctor, so they think they know. So they'll go in the next time and, Nurse Betty will come in and, Mr. Smith, how you doing? And he'll respond, I'm doing all right, I'm hanging in there, just here for my medication refills. And no, you're not okay. And you want to always document more than such a small disclaimer on what's going on with your health. A lot of us only go to the doctor 3 or 4 times a year with a chronic condition at best. So you want to maximize the time that you're in there in the doctor's office. You never miss an opportunity to say what you are struggling with. And even if you're having a better day that day, or your pain feels a little more manageable that day, or your fatigue is a little bit less that day, you still want to document what's been going on those last few months.
Yeah.
It is so disheartening to get in medical records for your client who is disabled and struggling, and a claim that you believe in and want to successfully argue, and you get the medical records in and you see that they've gone in for years and very little documentation or effort on their part to help build their claim.
I would say probably a lot of clients don't understand how important it is to tell your doctor that you're having difficulty checking your mail, or picking up a spoon to eat your cereal. It's like that kind of stuff it's indirect. So probably people think to say I'm in pain, but they don't think to specifically say that I can't even walk to my mailbox, I'm having trouble, buttoning up my shirt, stuff like that. But those kind of symptoms those are like green flags for Social Security, right?
They're paramount for your disability.
Yeah.
They separate the sheep from the goats, if you will. There are a lot of people who struggle with a bad back, or they have coronary artery disease, they have breathing problems, they have depression. Every other person on my street has chronic conditions, but that doesn't mean you're disabled. Social Security looks at your medical records. That's one part that they look at. But one of the main things they look at is what they call the B criteria. The medical records are the A criteria. The B criteria is what you have to say about your condition. And that comes down to functioning. It's one of the first things Carl taught me when I came on board. The judge cares about 3 things. Are you ready? And I still to this day say this every time I prep my clients. This is so true.
Yeah.
I will say, Mr. Smith, the judge cares about 3 things. Your ability to function, and guess what the third thing is? Your ability to function. And they will usually say it for me, and I will tell them how smart they are for getting that. But it's so true. Social Security and the judges, Social Security at the initial and recon level, and the administrative law judges at the hearings level, they are looking at your ability to function. And disabled people who are unable to work are usually moderate to markedly limited in their ability to do things. So just as you were given the example of, they'll go in and often say they're having pain, and they won't maybe give the specific limitation of an inability to grip, or unable to, open a 2-liter bottle, or unable to pick up coins or button their shirt, as you had said. But Social Security is specifically looking for those limitations. That's what they need, and they're looking for those specific details to help make not just a decision, a favorable decision. So the more limited you are in your ability to function, and your ability to communicate that to your doctor, to get used to that language of talking about your limitations.
Right.
Disabled people are usually limited in their ability to shop, go to the grocery store, clean their home, and sometimes it's so shameful for them to talk about. They have a hard time going into their doctor and communicating, especially a man who's worked all his life, some kind of, hard-working job. They're used to being very manly. They're defined by their job and or their ability to work, and they're embarrassed. They're shameful to go in and talk about they can't do that anymore. They're struggling to do that, and that's just talking about the physical side of stuff. When we get talking about the mental side of stuff, it has its own separate components, because some of those symptoms that render someone disabled are the most hardest things to talk about. Hygiene, number one thing that is the hardest for someone to talk about. They will go to their doctors and literally tell them there's no problem in that. They don't have any problem in their hygiene, no problem in bathing, no problem in changing their clothes. And they're lying through their teeth. They're lying through their teeth. They will go days, weeks without bathing. They will stay in the same clothes for extended periods of time. They don't brush their teeth. They don't take care of their hair. And it's very common for people who are struggling with deep depression, anxiety, PTSD. It's not anything to be shameful of. In fact, those things are the things that really help disability make a favorable decision in your claim for disability.
I would imagine, especially with mental health, because you got to think if you have degenerative disc disease, even if you don't talk about it as much as you probably should, you're still going to have some kind of scans that objectively show it's like, okay, well, this disc is not where it needs to be. But with depression or anxiety or something like that, it's a lot harder to prove because there's no x-ray showing anxiety. So if you don't have an x-ray showing anxiety, but then you also never talk about it, we really don't have anything to work with.
It's so true. I tell people all the time, the physical side of disability is probably actually easier to prove.
Yeah.
You do have the x-rays and the imaging most of the time.
Hopefully,
you can't put someone who's struggling with anxiety or depression, though, into a CAT scan or an MRI or an x-ray and say, wow, look at that marked anxiety. Look at that person's severe depression. Oh my gosh, that's the most severe PTSD I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that, and we can't. The mental health side of things is so much more subjective, whereas you can get those scans. I think for the physical side of stuff, you can do an x-ray, an MRI, blood work, a treadmill test, EMG test, nerve conduction test, vision test, hearing test. There's all kinds of tests that are very objectively supportive in their findings of disability, usually in their impressions or their results. And on the mental side, there's none of that. And so it is harder sometimes to prove your case mentally. And another thing, talking about the difference between physical and mental impairments, mental health records are often deeply intimate. Physical records are not. You go in and they take your height and your weight, refill your meds, list your meds. If you've done your part and documented a few things to them and shared with them, they might put them in there, and then you're on your merry way. But when you go in to see your psychiatrist or your therapist or the social worker, whoever your therapist may be, they're digging into your mind a little bit. They are going a little bit, more intimate into things. And mental health records will often be much more telling of what someone's doing in their ability to function.
Yeah.
You'll go into your therapist and you'll talk about your week or your month, and you may share things about going here or doing that, much more in depth than what it'll show in your physical records. And the same is true on the mental side. That's where someone who's really struggling, you might not see their lack of hygiene. You might not see some of the things they're struggling with on the physical side or in the physical medical records, but it'll go deep and intimate in the mental health side of things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's probably also another reason it's so important to actually talk to a therapist or psychiatrist. And I have, this would be a good question for you just to let me know, because I talk to a lot of potential new clients where their main diagnosis is mental health, but they're getting really good treatment with a primary care physician. but they don't see a therapist, they don't see a psychiatrist, and it's like, I always wonder how much a primary care doctor or like a nurse practitioner can actually help you with your mental health.
In the eyes of Social Security, usually very little.
Yeah.
If you are not in regular or ongoing mental health treatment, most judges are not going to find in favor of you being mentally disabled. I mean, you have to think about that. The criteria for getting on to disability is so strict anyways. You have people who are in regular ongoing mental health treatment for years and they still can't get their disability,
Right.
or they're
Yeah.
struggling to get it. So a lot of times that becomes very much on the back burner, or secondary to what else is going on. It definitely can occasionally assist a judge in leaning into the favorable decision if you're getting mental health treatment through your nurse or primary care. But
Yeah.
ultimately you want to get in with a therapist or at a mental health center. The burden is on you to prove your claim, and so sometimes you have to do your part too. That kind of becomes your job.
Yeah. It's always better to see a primary care doctor about your mental health as opposed to just not seeing any doctor
That
at
is
all.
correct. That is correct.
But that's what I tell most clients too, is like, ideally, best case scenario in a perfect world, you see a specialist every single month for everything you have wrong with you. They're your best friend, they're willing to fill out all these forms. But bare minimum, you gotta see someone. You have to have some kind of treatment. And that's probably a kind of a good segue. You were talking about the first thing you said about how important regular treatment is. The $1 million question is, if I'm out of work because I can't work and I don't have insurance and I don't have money, like, how do I get treatment? And I know you don't have a great answer for that, but what is your best answer for how do I get into treatment if I don't have insurance or income?
That is just a great question.
It's
it
the
comes
question,
up
right?
all the time.
Yeah.
You probably see it a lot in some of the things that you do on your end, and I've definitely seen it so many times, especially through the years, all the work that we've done with people that don't have insurance and or going to the shelters and helping those in the homeless community. But depending on what state you live in, you have access to different things. We're in the state of Tennessee, and we're one of the 10 or 12 states that doesn't participate in the Medicaid funding program. I'm going to highlight this gently, but the federal government assists the states in offering Medicaid to the residents of that state, and the state has to pick up a small part of it. And I want to say that the federal government funds 80 to 90% of it, and the state picks up a small part of the funding. It can be a big burden to the state to pick up 10 to 20% of your state's health care for your sickest people.
Yeah.
Tennessee is one of the states that does not participate in that or offer Medicaid. In our state, unless you're disabled, pregnant, or have end-stage kidney disease on dialysis, you're not eligible for any kind of Medicaid.
Yeah, which would be TennCare.
Which
right?
would be TennCare in our state. Most other states offer something like that. We do not. So in other states, you can apply for assistance and get it if you have chronic conditions. In our state, and if you were one of the states, I do encourage my clients, we have some wonderful, wonderful free clinics in our state. I'm going to name a few locally, but it's a segue into researching something in your area.
Yeah, do your own research, definitely.
And yes, United Neighborhood Clinic is one of our clinics around here. I think they have 9 or 10 little branches that they serve the homeless and or the lower income individuals. They are an incredible treatment source. They just provide incredible care. They support their patients, through any of the processes, including the disability process. Usually, they provide just great personal, intimate care. They're just a wonderful facility. We have a lot of health departments. Their care is not as good as the United Neighborhood Clinics, I will say that, but it is free care. If it's all you have, it's better than nothing. You can go and still share your limitations, still get your medication, still get your needs met minimally.
Yeah.
Mental health treatment. I believe there are, numerous places that you can go that offer free mental health care.
Mm-hmm.
They want people to have access to mental health care and it to be affordable and or free for those in need. We have numerous places around here, volunteer behavioral health, a mental health co-op, even at the United Neighborhood clinics, they have picked up a psychiatric side, like a mental health side, and it's just wonderful. There's no reason someone is not able to get any kind of care.
Yeah. Also, telehealth too. That's a really big thing for mental health. I don't know if that's federally available or if it's state to state, but either way, it's if you just Google like telehealth, mental health, or whatever it is. I don't know any specific companies, but telehealth is huge now, which is basically just you don't have insurance, you don't have income, you can still go online, right, on your phone or on your laptop or on your tablet, and you'll be able to speak to a counselor about your depression, your anxiety, your PTSD, and we can use those medical records.
That is correct.
Yeah, that is valid.
You're either going in and talking and sharing the same thing, or you're at home on the phone or on a Zoom call sharing the same things.
Yeah.
You have to be willing, if you're pursuing your disability, to be involved in it enough to where you are documenting your impairments. It's Carl used to say something at one time, we used to call it playing the game. And it's not that disability is any game at all, and you're not playing a game, but it's meant in terms of you have to move your own chess pieces in your own game. You've got to strategically move yourself, towards the goal of getting your disability.
Yeah, we got to do the best we can according to their rules.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, if you have no treatment at all, there's little to nothing we can do for you. Because you got to think if your main diagnosis is depression and anxiety or PTSD or even anything physical, and you're just saying that Social Security should believe you because I'm disabled because I say I am, okay, well then what's preventing every American from saying that and then receiving benefits? Like, obviously there have to be some kind of parameters in place to prevent bad actors, or not even bad actors, but prevent people that are not disabled. So that's the thing that wins your case is medical records.
That is correct. In fact, we won't be able to sign or take a client if they're not in any kind of treatment. Mm-hmm. A lot of times if I have a client who I can tell is really struggling and they just need a little help, they need a little encouragement, I'll tell them if they will go and establish care at one of these free clinics or a free clinic in their area, that I will, be able to help them.
Right.
But they have to help themselves. They have to go and establish, that care on their own.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's simply just because we genuinely don't believe that we can win the case without treatment. I've spoken to people where it's like, I believe that you're disabled. Everything you have told me, I believe you and I want to help you out, but we're going to lose the case because you haven't seen a doctor in 6 years.
A lot of people think it's like filling out a form and applying for like your food stamps or something, but the disability process is a legal process.
Yeah.
It is no different than criminal law, civil law, family law. It's disability law.
Yep.
And it's not just filling out a form like you are, filling out an application to be on, you know, a softball league, or you're filling out an application to you know, to get your food stamps or something. It's a legal process. And so, yes, I would never want someone to think that I could assist them or help them. I'm going to be real and tell them like it is and say, you know, listen, I couldn't win your claim at this point.
Yep.
You couldn't win your claim at this point.
But here's what you can do in order for us
here's
to
a
win
few
the case.
things that you could do, especially, you know, I've spent a lot of my years, and, you know, Carl has, you know, too, with his company. We've gone to many shelters and spent many years going to the rescue missions here in the Nashville area, and even in our local area here in Lebanon. You know, even for someone that is homeless and struggling, I can see that they can't walk. I can see it. I mean, I'll be there with them in person. I will see them struggling. I will see them grimacing in pain. I will see them unable to walk from here 10 feet over there. But they have no medical care or no treatment. I will urge them to go right next door to the free clinic and a few of those places, you know, there, and just establish treatment. If they will show me that they're taking the initiative, you know, to do that for themselves, I will help them. I will step in and help them. They need a helping hand, you know, a lot of times. And so I want to give them that, and I want to help them, but I need you to be in care. I need you to be seeing a doctor.
Yeah. Well, and that's the key too. You know, the client, we need to see that the client has taken initiative. You got to think of the inverse of that. If Social Security sees that this person's not even trying to get into treatment, this is not necessarily how it is, but Social Security will say, you're not even trying to get treatment, therefore your condition is obviously not that severe. You can't be that disabled if you're not even trying to get treatment. That's kind of how they look at it, right?
That is correct. You know, at the lower levels, at the initial and recon level, it's a very impersonal level. You kind of are a case file, and it's not personal. But when you get before, well, it feels personal when you're denied to you, but when you're before a law judge, and you know, yes, he has to follow the letter of the law, if you will, but judges have so much more leeway. They can definitely rule with their heart a little bit more. They can definitely rule with an iron fist a little bit more. Judges are like all of us as people. They are they range from cold and mean. They would probably deny their own mother or their own sister, and they range all the way to the other spectrum. Some of the judges are just so generous. They probably allow claims that I wouldn't allow if I were a judge. I think we were speaking of a case before we started this podcast. But you know, judges are definitely a little bit more personal, and they will be very direct with you. Mr. Smith, you couldn't go to the doctor. This is one of their favorite things. Mr. Smith, you smoke cigarettes? I do. How much you smoke? Pack a day? You can buy a pack of cigarettes a day, and you have the money to do that, but you don't have any money to go see the doctor. Boy, they love to deny people in that kind of scenario.
Like, well,
you know, and I've learned, you know, I prep my client and we go over that, you know, yes, those things hurt your claim to buy, you know, a pack of cigarettes a day, but yet claim that you can't afford to see the doctor. Judges do not like that, and they will call you out on that. And the worst thing that you want to do is go through this process and not do what you should or need to do and get before a law judge and risk all that time. Get that moment before a judge, like a good judge. You have this beautiful moment with a great judge, and you have, you know, someone assisting you. There are lots of good reps who do this job, but you have a great rep who's assisting you, and they can't do anything with your claim, and you didn't do anything. You spent this entire process doing nothing. you got your spot in line and you didn't go to the doctor, you didn't document your medical records, you didn't build a relationship with someone who supports you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you'll go to the doctor that the disability doctor that Social Security will send you to, and they don't support you in your disability either.
Yeah.
You go into them and tell them you're not on any meds and you're not seeing a doctor. Well, the disability doctor that Social Security sends you to doesn't find you disabled either.
Yeah.
Don't waste your spot in line and not do the work to try and get your disability with everything you have. Don't waste that spot in line. Don't go before a really good law judge and miss out on getting your disability when you need it, when there are just these things you can do to help make your claim more successful.
Yeah, I mean, the wait time for a decision takes so long. The silver lining is you have all that time to be building your case. And a lot of times the hearing is like, that's what we've been preparing for this whole time. So now we're 18 months into the case, or we're 2 years into the case. This is the moment we've all been waiting for.
This is where I get to do my work.
Yeah.
This is where we get to duke it out, if you will. This is where I get to argue on your behalf, where I get to apply the law, where I get to state, the theory and the legal basis for allowing your claim. And if I have nothing, that makes it very hard and unlikely.
Yeah, got to make sure you go through all the motions. Like I said, best case scenario, you have a specialist for everything that's ever happened to you, and you see them every week, right?
That's best case scenario.
Yeah.
Which,
if you can't do that, if you don't have any insurance, or if you have insurance that's not going to cover that, try to see your primary care every month or every 2 months or every 3 months. If you can't do that, try to get into some kind of, well, first, if you can't do that because you don't have insurance because you're not working, apply for Medicaid if you're in a state that you think you're eligible for
correct.
Medicaid. If you're denied Medicaid, you can't just give up and then say, well, I don't have insurance. You got to go to the health department. You got to get into a free neighborhood clinic, some kind of reference point.
One other thing that, we can, wrap this part of, this talk up with is you can also, check the market. There are tons of available insurance on the Obamacare, the market. I'm not even sure exactly what we call that in this today. Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, but for a lot of people that are not working or can't work or have tried to work, they can get on and get a health plan for little to no monthly premium. A lot of times if you are in the hospital or you have been admitted to a hospital, a social worker will come around sometimes and see if you're eligible for any of that. And they want you to be eligible because they want to recoup, their money. So they're looking to see if you're eligible for things. That is a viable option. And if you're ever in the hospital, to ask the social worker about that.
Yeah, I think that's a solid place to wrap it up. Just do everything you can to get into treatment. What I say is just, it's really cutthroat, but if you have a disability and there's no medical record supporting it, you might as well just not have a disability.
Keep on working.
Yeah.
Don't quit your job.
It's cutthroat. That's how it is. Yeah.
It is cutthroat. And boy, that's a tough note to end on, but it's a strong and real note.
That's just how they're going to look at it. I know and you know that that's not exactly how it works, but Social Security is going to say, you're saying you have this disability, you don't have any treatment, so you must not actually have
It's not that severe.
Yeah.
And that's what they're saying. But if you'll get in with the doctor, you'll get in somewhere, free clinic, doctor somewhere, and you begin to build a claim, you are on the road to getting your disability, and that's a good place to start.
Yep.
And a great place to end.